Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We're an anime podcast where every 2 weeks we come together on this podcast and we discuss an anime that we've recently watched. We do it like we're a book club, but we don't get very far because we are three idiots, so we turn that discussion over to our listeners to bite on the points that we start and put out and then come up with even better ideas than what we have. That's what this podcast is all about. Thank you for listening. We are discussing the Netflix hit Cyberpunk Edgerunners. A little bit different for us, definitely in a maturity rating, but we should have some interesting thoughts because we always do when it's Studio Trigger. To help me discuss it, first off, we have to start with the Blitzkrieg bop to my Ramones. It's Jeremy. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I discovered a new YouTube channel that I want to recommend. It's good. It's called Steve Reviews, and he basically goes over like weird or old different animations and shows. Some of them are from like the 90s, and others, like I didn't even know BFG didn't just mean big, gun.
Gun.
I thought that's all it meant, but apparently it also means big friendly giant. Because there's a show about that.
That's a Roald Dahl book.
Yeah, but it's got two shows. Apparently.
Yeah.
That's what matters to people today.
Talk about the adaptations.
Books. Come on. But he also did, like, I watched one he did on Don't Hug Me, I'm Scared. That's amazing. I never got to watch that series.
It's worth a watch if you love just messed up content.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I got. And he covers like Moral Oral and Mad God, that claymation and like stop motion.
Did he do
really...
salad fingers?
What's that?
Did he do salad fingers?
I bet you he does. I bet you he's got a salad fingers one. I haven't actually watched that one though, but I watched all of those. Those were good. But other than that,
I'm not sure good's the word.
It made an impression.
Yes, definitely.
That's what it did. But other than that, I've just been working.
And our other host, the guy with the ice in his drink that keeps clicking into the microphone. Yes, that would be the driver's license to my Olivia Rodrigo. It's Jason. How are you doing?
Neither of those references I understand.
Me too.
That really says more about you than anything else. Like, the Ramones are classic. Olivia Rodrigo's hot new. I would not expect anyone to get both, but at least one of those in musical history should matter to you.
Well, now that you've said Ramones,
that's why I have no idea.
Blitzkrieg Bop to the Ramones. The Blitzkrieg Bop.
Oh,
Starting in the front line.
Yeah. Maybe I'd recognize the song, but yeah, I need to hear the word Ramones.
Those are okay. Olivia Rodrigo is not really punk, but Ramones is like one of the original classic punk rock bands of all time. Like,
did you have to look these up?
No.
To refresh your memory, even?
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I did some Googling to see, like, for modern. I wanted a modern punk that's not really... Olivia Rodrigo sings songs about 17-year-olds getting broken up with their boyfriends. But she's considered new punk sometimes, and then real punk artists get upset about that. And it doesn't matter. That's why it's Jason. Jason, what have you been up to?
Well, my time's actually been consumed with old Minecraft mod, but as far as relevancy, I've actually really been enjoying Gundam Evolution and also Overwatch 2.
One of us.
Right? Which, a lot of people will kind of go, oh, they're the same game, but like after playing, 10 plus hours in each of them, they're starkly different. And I think one of the biggest things I miss when I play Overwatch is there's no walk run option. Like that messes with me, because in every other shooter that I play, when you hit W, you walk, and then if you hold down shift, you either sprint or you run or you go faster. And that is just not a feature in Overwatch 2. It is for one character.
One character has it. Yep.
Is that the reason everybody is complaining about Overwatch 2? Because I see a lot of hate.
Standard.
I think the best way I heard it described was, imagine going to a restaurant 5 years ago and ordering a meal, right? And you consumed the meal and it was delicious and you went home. And then today, the same restaurant changed up their menu and that particular item is now changed. And now you want a refund on the meal that you ate 5 years ago.
That's a really
weird analogy.
but think about it. People are getting pissed that they paid for Overwatch 1 and now that Overwatch 2 is free, they're like, I want my money back. It's like, you consumed it for how many years? Like,
now,
why do you think you would deserve a refund?
Did it replace Overwatch 1? Like Overwatch?
Yeah, Overwatch 1 is yep.
Uh,
all their servers are done.
The stupidest thing is just calling it Overwatch 2, which is it's not.
It's really not.
It's very updated. They made some really good changes. Like I like the 5v5. They made
the graphics
more
are exactly the same.
But yeah, the graphics are the same. The gameplay feels almost exactly the same. They had one new mode. As someone who pays for a Call of Duty every year, I don't get why people are upset. But I do think calling it 2 was a stretch. They should have just waited, because they're going to do the PvE stuff, right? There's going to be story missions to co-op play and stuff. That would make sense when that comes out. Like, hey, this is now, we have this whole extra section. It's the second version of the game.
Interesting.
I wait.
Which I found was really interesting when they released Overwatch 1. It was because their PvE failed. Like, they couldn't get it out the door. So they just took all the assets from whatever that game was originally called and then made Overwatch so they could get a product out the door. And I found that fascinating, that the dev team for all this time has wanted to have a PvE experience with this game, and they just can't do it. But it's been promised that it's coming, so.
All right. And my name is Troy. Thank you for listening. What I've been up to, if you thought those rants were bad, wait till this one. More Gundam Evolution. I watched the first episode of Chainsaw Man with my daughter because she was not waiting for this podcast. So I agreed to watch it with her. She-Hulk ended. I watched the final episode. I really liked it, but I turned it off and went, if they let her do that, what are they going to let Deadpool do? This is going to be crazy. So I had fun with that. And then we're going to talk about the new Star Wars because I'm a Star Wars guy. We're going to talk about Andor.
Oh boy.
Everybody loves Andor. Andor is I keep seeing is why can't all Star Wars be this good? And I watch it, and objectively, it is better written, better acted, better shot. It's on locations. There's compelling drama. Like all that stuff is better than like say Obi-Wan Kenobi. But I just don't like it as much. There's Star Wars stuff I'm loving in it. You know, there's droids that are cute. There's a scene where a guy hammers a mining town awake. He just like hammers on these big bell drum thing. It does this huge ceremony. I was like, oh, I love that. Like Darth Vader's out there killing someone, but this guy wakes up every day excited to do his hammer routine. And I love that. But for me, as nice as it is, as well done as it is, it's not fun. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi was silly and cheesy. They're blocking laser bolts from from snow speeders right in their face. That's silly. I get why that most people don't like that. But my son saw that and dressed up as a Jedi and jumped around playing a Jedi. He walks past Andor with like, oh, they're talking about rebellion again and the emotional stakes and doing well written material.
The only thing I've seen negative about it is that people will say it's episode 6 and something finally happened. Like,
yeah, so
I'm bored.
The setup seems to be like it's 2 episodes of setup and then a third episode of payoff of action.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a very slow burn. It's done by the guy who did he directed one of the Bourne movies. So it has like this very high stakes political drama. And like I love seeing Mon Mothma as a young senator trying to start a rebellion. But I'm not having fun. It's not fun for me.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
Do you objectively like, I guess maybe, or subjectively, do you consider Star Wars IP that has Jedi and lightsaber in it somewhere in the series better than the ones that don't?
No, absolutely not. Opposite.
So you like it when they don't appear?
Right. I like pirates and smugglers and flying ships. I'd rather watch stuff with Han Solo. Like Solo to me is almost peak Star Wars because it's silly, it's fun. We're flying through a giant monster's mouth as you get sucked into a black hole. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense, but it was fun. And then
There was a train heist.
There was a train heist on an upside down train. It was
It had
fun.
its moments.
This has like a real street shootout brawl and people are dying and it has stakes. Again, I get why people are like this. It is an adult Star Wars. But I feel like part of Star Wars' DNA is even Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks is in Star Wars for a reason. He's not my favorite at all. I get why he's no one's favorite, but he was there for a reason. R2 fixes the Millennium Falcon, but then he falls down a hole as C-3PO chases him with one leg. That's Star Wars DNA. There's a silliness. There's a clown, jokey stuff always running through because it's originally for kids. Anyway, that's my rant. I'm still going to watch all this Andor. I appreciate it for what it is. I enjoy anything in the Star Wars IP unabashedly.
I was just going to say, I just have to say, I am impressed to hear that there is a Star Wars out there that when you don't like it, you acknowledge it.
Yeah. So many people complain about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I'm like, I had a lot of fun watching Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was silly.
About Solo. I really, really liked Solo, and every time I bring it up, people are like, "Oh, that was such an awful movie."
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan.
Of
course, I could say that about pretty much every single Star Wars thing that's come out in quite a while.
You like Mandalorian, though, right?
I did like the first season of Mandalorian.
Okay.
Second season wasn't so great, but first season was cool.
What about third and a half season, right in the middle of Book of Boba Fett? No, I'm kidding.
Oh God,
we should
Book of Mandalorian.
We should talk about our anime. We're discussing Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and so we're going to do our non-spoiler review first, and I'll let Jason start us off.
I'm having a hard time with this one. There's a lot of highs and a lot of lows in this one. At face value, like just my gut reaction, it was okay. The sound design is amazing. Basically, Trigger knocked it out of the park just like they normally do with a lot of these visually. But they didn't write the story, and I have a lot of problems with the story. I have a lot of problems with the characters, and I just did not enjoy the decision making or the character building. And so, as much as I enjoyed it visually, I just didn't connect with anything. So it'll be an interesting discussion, but yeah, I don't know, kind of middle of the road for me.
All right, Jeremy, what do you think?
So it's definitely not on any of my top lists, but I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was okay. It's beautiful, of course, just like Jason said, but I expected that. This is Studio Trigger after all. And coming at it from the perspective of having played the game, it was really cool to see the characters that you might have encountered in the game if the game took place like a few years earlier or something, right? And so I thought they did a really good job of giving the same sense of being in that city, of having characters that are not unlike what you would see when you were running around on the streets. I also thought they did a great job of like portraying just how horrible that environment was based on those people, their behavior, the way they lived. Like there's one scene in the beginning, and I think you get the scene like twice, where he's just walking down, the main character's walking down the street, and there's people behind him. And again, even though this podcast will not necessarily be M-rated, we are going to have to describe some of the things that happen, not in great detail, but they may not be the most, they may not be our traditional level of descriptions here. But there's basically a couple of guys they have some sort of self-gratifying devices on. There we go. That's how we'll put it. And so it's gross, it's creepy, but it fits in this city, right? Like you have extreme levels of gore in this anime that you're only going to find in a select amount of other anime, to the point where, I mean, I wasn't necessarily so grossed out that I was turning away, but it was kind of shocking, like just the level of gore. But it fits. Like all of these things that I would criticize about it, at the same time, I can't deny that they do belong in this environment, in this story. So it's almost like I have a little bit more of an issue with the world being unpleasant than I do necessarily with the anime. Also, I discovered something just in doing a little bit of research on the differences between the tabletop game and the video game. And I found that apparently there's these 3 rules of Cyberpunk. I've seen 4 listed in some places, but in very, very brief summary, they are style over substance, attitude is everything, and live on the edge. And so if that basically makes up the entirety of what is behind like the emotions and the environment and the theme that you're trying to bring out in this anime of what a watcher should see, what the audience should see, I thought they actually did a really good job of getting across that ridiculousness. So,
well, they definitely called the right studio.
Yeah, they did.
That could be Trigger's mantra too.
Yeah, nobody's gonna do that like Trigger.
I enjoyed it more than these guys did. I really liked it. Trigger resonates with me on an emotional level, and that's usually what I'm looking for. I do think there's like some technical issues with the storytelling.
Sorry about that.
Well, I'm sorry. This acclaimed, well-known studio that's well beloved by critics and fans alike, you have a problem with. You'll just need to take some medication there, Jason.
Where's my green vials? Immunosuppressants to emotions.
There you go.
The emotional through lines hit well, especially since, I mean, I really feel like they tell you from the first OP the ending.
Oh yeah,
they do. Or at least in a general sense. And I was like, okay, I'll be ready for that. And then it happens, and I wasn't ready for it. So and that means I feel they delivered that emotional impact well, even with it broadcasted to brace for it. So Trigger does that well. There's some storytelling issues that I have with the main character. Some things I wish they had done around episode 7-8 that they kind of, I felt, fast forwarded past. But otherwise, I was really down with the themes, the exploration of the city. It's a somber tale, but I enjoy those occasionally. Not all the time, but definitely occasionally.
Yeah.
So recommendation from me. Let's talk about the OP that is fire, guys. Literally and figuratively.
Yep.
No, what do you guys think of the OP and the ED?
I watched them both like twice and then I skipped them.
How dare you?
Well, I mean, I can understand skipping the OP.
It's so good. What are you talking about?
It just didn't resonate with me.
I can understand skipping the visuals of the OP. Like you watch that once and you're like, okay, that was cute. But then if you just keep watching the OP, that's just kind of creepy, I guess. But if you're maybe you just turn the visuals off and you're listening, I don't know. Especially because my wife's like sitting right there. So like if I'm sitting here at the computer, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm enjoying the OP. I mean the ED. Sorry.
Oh, you mean the ED?
Yeah, was I saying OP? I meant ED.
Yeah, you said
Sorry. OP. Yeah, no, I'm talking about the rotating cyborg.
You're talking about nipples. Lady. You're talking about nipples.
I'm talking about nipples. Yeah.
Like, we're gonna have to say nipples a lot in this, so let's just get it out of the way. This is the nipple episode.
Yeah. So basically, OP was
no shortage.
Nice. Yeah, I like the music, but I mean, you're not gonna watch that OP every time. I mean, ED.
God dang it! All right.
We've done this before, right?
Yeah.
OP.
Troy, what are your thoughts?
I absolutely love the OP for the song and the visuals of the opening. The whole thing of the main character and all the characters he cares about flashing inside of him in one color, and then everything around him is just the flashing of the city around him, showing the two forces of the story. We have our main character versus the city. It's very, very obvious, but I did love the impact. And if you actually really pay attention to the details of it, it kind of tells you how the story is going to go. It makes more sense once you've seen the story, but then you're like, oh, that's why the body parts are separating. Stuff like that. So I like the OP. The ED was hard to watch because Netflix has a going straight to next episode feature. But I also watched this with my 16-year-old daughter. And yeah, I was always happy when the nipples were off the screen.
Right.
But I love the song. I love the song so much. And they actually made a music video set in the same world. Like one of the characters is in it. And you can listen to the song that way with no nipples. And that I actually preferred. It was a great music video.
No nipple songs are the best songs.
No nipples.
Yes.
But very much sets the same emotional tone as well.
Yeah, and they use that song later to great effect in the actual anime.
Yeah,
it's very good song.
One of the characters' theme songs. Her nipples theme song.
Yeah,
basically. And it definitely works well in the show.
And speaking of that music video that you mentioned, that actually is like a little bit. It's almost like a prologue for the crew that he gets with.
Mm-hmm.
Like what happened to them before he joins them.
Yep. All right. Before we go on to our spoiler section, though, let's talk about our next anime. We're going to be watching The Devil is a Part-Timer. The second part of the sequel series recently released, but we're going to go back and watch the original, and then on our next podcast episode, watch the new one, the sequel. So our first one is the original Devil is a Part-Timer, 13 episodes, I believe, Jason?
Yes.
Have any of us not seen the first season? I believe I've seen it.
I've seen it. But we've all seen it. That's the answer.
We've all seen it then. Okay. That's going to be interesting. Okay. I'll remember it better than seeing the second time.
I do still want to see it, though, because like we weren't reviewing anime when I watched it.
Yeah. Same here.
It would be good to get a refresher. I was just curious because that's rarely the case with us.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm. All right. Let's go on to then our spoiler section for Cyberpunk Edgerunners. I don't know how much. There's probably some spoilers for the actual video game in this because I'm going to be asking Jeremy some questions at least, but probably nothing about like endings or anything.
Yeah, there's really nothing, honestly.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to be just more interested. Like, is this kind of stuff in the world? And you're going to have to, like I said, explain psychosis to me.
Cyberpsychosis
And how that works in the game because I'm just really interested how that works as a mechanic. But all right.
Actually, I can explain that to you in one word, or let's see, 2 words. Yeah, 2 words. I had to count them. It doesn't.
No, really?
Yep, it does in the tabletop game, but not in the video game.
Oh, I assumed it was like a mana bar that you can over deplete and have consequences. Nope. Huh.
There's some interesting story behind it, based on some of the information that I was able to find. I think it was on a wiki somewhere that I found it, but apparently there was an intention to use a humanity score that would basically indicate, almost like if you remember on the old Star Wars D6 game, where, you know, if you start putting on different cybernetic parts, you start losing that stat. You go to the dark side, right? So same thing here, where you have this humanity score, and that score just slowly goes down the more parts that you put on. But they were very worried that this would come across as if they were saying prosthetics make you less human. And so they decided to just cut it. But the tabletop game actually has a system kind of like that. But humanity is something that is very different in... I found a really cool post from the designer of the tabletop game that explains it really well. And you know what? We'll get into that when we get to the cyber psychos.
Okay. All right, so this is a cyberpunk story, if it wasn't clear from the title. In a cyberpunk world, very futuristic, just a city called Night City. Is there other cities in the world, or is this literally the last one? Okay, it shows it's very desert around it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's probably a stand-in for Vegas.
Yeah, I think it's in California, if I remember correctly.
So it's actually on like Earth in the U.S.
I think so. Yeah.
I definitely got Blade Runner vibes from the whole thing for those looking for a reference, or Ghost in the Shell, but with a lot more. Like if Ghost in the Shell and Las Vegas had a baby.
Yeah.
That's cyberpunk.
Yep.
And we start the series or this anime proper with a man walking up to a police station and just opening fire and starting this huge gun battle. And not only is he killing indiscriminately, he seems to be able to move so fast they can't see him. And this effect will be very prominent throughout the series. I love this effect of how they show just the shadows or the silhouettes of the character behind him. I also love when they don't show us that. There's a few times where they re-show it, how it would look to everyone else. And I love that, where it was just like a flash and then they're gone. But yeah, so he's just murdering all these people. And this basically a SWAT team where they're like made for dealing with super powerful cyborgs. They show up and they kill him. Are you smiling because I'm referencing this all wrong? I'm suddenly all paranoid that, oh my god, he's so naive to the world of cyberpunk.
No, I think you're doing a great job.
Okay, worry.
Nope.
And then we see our main character wake up as if he has been dreaming this, but that is not the case, despite what my daughter thought. She was like, he's having visions. I'm like, no. He's watching a simulation, or he's playing a simulation, which is this really happened literally that night, and he has gotten the file already, a copy of it, and he gets to live out the experience. That is what people do for fun. It is the equivalent of so being a cyborg is kind of this whole series reminds me of drugs, and I would say this is like weed, where it's not really going down the road that everyone else is going down to with the hard drugs, but it's kind of just there at the start. And like he's selling it at school and that kind of stuff.
So,
I would go ahead.
To be specific, this simulation he's watching is for somebody else. He didn't purchase it. He's kind of a middleman to sell it. Is that
but
right?
He does enjoy watching them as well.
Right. But yeah, he didn't only because he has a client does he have a hold of this, because we find out pretty quickly that his family is pretty poor.
So from the lore of the game, brain dances are pretty common. It's just the illegal ones that start to cause problems, especially if you have full body sensation. So I would say you're right with that analogy, but I think it would be more towards the hardcore drugs, the more sensation there is, and the more horrible things you experience, like snuff films, stuff like that, that could really wreck somebody.
Snuff films on the Baka podcast. Who saw that coming?
Cyberpunk.
we should definitely give credit where it's due. I picked this, so
yeah.
We didn't even give a mature content warning in the last episode. I did tweet it, didn't I?
Yeah,
I will. Anyway,
Netflix does a pretty good job of showing content warnings.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah, even
and if you don't figure it out, you'll figure it out very fast. It will not.
Very fast.
With the first scene.
This was our main character. This teenage boy. His name is David. What do you guys think of David?
Can't stand him.
Wow.
You want to expand on why?
Okay, so the first half of this season is I'm all in on David. I think some bad circumstances happened to him. I'm all in on when he just decks that rich kid. I understand his desperation to install these cybernetics in him. It's when we get to the second half and he's learned nothing.
Mhm.
There are no lessons learned. He's 100% hypocritical with his worldview and his actions. And I think the story just kind of takes a nosedive, specifically surrounding David. Because in the before his soon to be boss, he takes over for him. I'm all in on all of his actions, all of his like naivety. So I guess I kind of like him, but I really don't.
Mhm. It sounds like what you liked is the more the student side of him rather than the mentor, because like he's not.
But I was all for him taking over,
Yeah.
and then taking his experiences and then making things better or making improved decisions.
Mhm.
He makes none of those.
Mhm. Well,
and then holds other people to those same standards
yeah.
that he is then not doing himself. And it irritated the crap out of me. And I was actually angry by the end of the anime.
So I feel you. I know exactly what you're talking about. There were so many times where I was watching him and some of the exchanges between him and Lucy and other characters, and I was like, this is really stupid. Like, why are you making these stupid decisions? Your reasons come across very flimsy. Like, oh, my mom wanted me to get to the top, and my leader wanted me to get to the top, and so I'm going to be stupid now. But when I read about the 3 rules and actually read the definition of how that's supposed to play out, what that explained is that basically the way that characters, especially edge runners, are supposed to actually, like the kind of persona that an edge runner is supposed to give off is all about swagger. It's all about appearances. It's about imagine what you want to happen, and you will shape the universe with your intentions and your desire. And so, for example, some of the quotes are, remember, everyone's carrying lethal hardware and high-tech enhancements. They're not going to be impressed by your gun unless you swing into the club acting like you want to use it, right? So, like, you're encouraging this sort of bravado and stupidity that if you're going to have this be consistently on the character so that they're, constantly living on the edge as an edge runner, running on this edge where if they ever get off the edge, they're not cool anymore. They're not being the character that they're supposed to be in Cyberpunk. So the only thing they can do is just run on this edge until they fall off, which becomes a thematic thing with the anime where they're using even those terms of like, you're going to fall off the edge. They're referring to this specifically. Like,
no one
to
cares
be
how
on the
you
edge.
live. Everyone just cares how you die.
Yep, they're even saying, like, in Style Over Substance, one of the definitions, the explanations is if you are going to die, make sure you make it look like you planned it. Like nothing is about thinking before you move. Everything is about, the spectacle of moving in the coolest way and going out with the biggest bang. And so with that in mind, that like this is the kind of world they're trying to create, and especially this part of the city, these people, these edge runners, they embody this kind of a mentality. I understand why they did this, and it would mean that the people that are surrounding him, his mentors at the time, are going to be shoving that down his throat. Like, this is how you are going to improve here. This is how you'll, impress us. This is how you're going to be an adult here. This is how you survive, since every other direction you don't want to do, or you failed at, one or the other. So I can see why he would do that, but I still agree with you that like this is not a pleasant character. I don't like seeing a story where a character makes decisions that are so clearly driven by appearance and driven by impulse or getting the big score, willing to risk everything and lose everything. Like it doesn't make sense to me, and so I can't connect with those characters either. But I just wanted to point out that like I think that's what they wanted to do with this character, but I still don't like him either.
Thank you for explaining that, Jeremy. That makes me hate it just much more.
Yeah, there you go. You have an explanation for why it's so distasteful.
Yeah, now I really can't stand this world because
Yeah.
it's all for naught. It's like, why care about any of these characters?
Yeah.
Because
Jeremy, what do you think of David?
Yeah, Jeremy,
Troy. Yeah,
No,
Troy, what you think? I
Let
think
Jeremy go before
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
okay.
lay into you.
So okay. So I really liked the first half. I thought it was really cool, and I liked him becoming a mentor. But you know, I also didn't like how I came at this from the perspective of the game, and I was expecting the characters to stay within the limits of what I saw in the game and what I experienced in the game. Right. So like there's some scenes where the things he's doing, even given the crazy power that he's granted, are so off the charts that I was like, I couldn't even imagine doing like a 10th or a 20th of that kind of an effect in the game world. I couldn't destroy that many things at once. That is insane. How is he still alive? Especially when he's like completely open on the front and can be shot. Like there's
He's
just
got magnets.
yeah. He's got magnets and gravity, and but then like without jumping to the end and my complaints about the conclusion of the anime, um, because that all revolves around David as well. It really seems like the anime knew where they were starting from and they knew where they wanted to get. And they knew the emotions that they needed to pull when they got there. But there's this middle area revolving around David's behavior that is either you have to excuse it as cyberpsychosis starting to take effect. And so then you can be like, well, I can justify it. Or you just look at it and go, you stopped caring about the people around you. You stopped thinking things through at all. And he just becomes really frustrating.
My one big complaint about this series stems from David, and in the same place that Jason's complaint comes from, and it's that they don't show very well his intentions, and I do think they come across very muddled. He has that phrase of "I'm trying to live my mom's dream and Maine's dream."
Mm-hmm.
Those are two opposite dreams, and neither that doesn't really make any sense. I don't even know what Maine's dream was. Well, now I do, thanks to Jeremy's explanation.
Yeah.
Edgerunners, but it's still very kind of generic. Like, just be cool.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint like what was the end goal. They don't have end goal. Okay, so I get that, but he does. But the problem is the anime has him say it and never shows him actually do it. He says at one point, "Everything I've done was for you, Lucy, to save her from the city. Everything that David loves is killed by the city." And he takes the one thing he loves the most and he saves it. And I think there's even a point in the story where he's decided, I'm dead. I'm a dead man walking. So there's no point in not going forward. We're walking that edge to save Lucy. However, the anime does a really piss poor job of this. They even have him see a commercial about a rocket to the moon, and he goes, "Oh, that's how much that is." And it's like, wait, if the whole thing was for her, why haven't you not looked up the price?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, all I needed was a scene where he comes home and he empties out his pockets and there's a crumpled up pamphlet about moon tickets to show that that's been his goal this whole time. And then you don't even have to say it. and so that's my, in a technical looking at this story, that's a huge flaw in it, that David's goals are very blurry, and when he finally does state his goal, he has to say it, and we're not shown it, and it built into the story proper.
Mm-hmm.
But the story of David, who watches everyone he loves get killed by the city, decide, I'm not going to be able to escape this, but I can do something to help someone I love get out, then I'm okay with every decision he makes. He's basically on a kamikaze run to save one person, and I'm okay with that.
Except when they have like a little argument that isn't really an argument, he's like okay with
I want to break up with you.
Go.
Yeah, should we just break up?
Yeah.
And it's funny because before that, when they were still together after the big first climax, I was really excited. I'm like, oh, that's cool that they stayed together, even though like she's not on the team anymore, but they didn't just break up for emotional reasons. And then they had that scene. So yeah, that stuff bothers me. I think that's some, like, you're just trying to spin some wheels to buy time. And the real reason they have him say that is so when he calls her later, she won't answer the phone. He's not worried about her.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only reason they need him to think they might have broken up. So when he calls her and she doesn't answer the phone, he's like, well, okay, I guess that makes a logical sense. That's the only reason they say that line.
Yep.
So technical issues with the writing. David, the character, I love the story of David, the character. I love the journey of, it reminds me, and it's funny, I don't usually like these movies, but like Scarface or Blow or people where it's like a Goodfellas is a good one. It started off in a life of crime. I was just being happy and being with friends, and then I did some bad things, and then I did some bad things, and then I made some really bad choices. Those are true stories. People make choices like that. I can see where David went, and the fact that he was doing it for someone else, then at least I'm not like, well, you didn't just do it because of a drug habit. So it's even a little more palatable than like Goodfellas. So I'm fine with David. I think Jason's way off. But I can admit it's the story's fault and not Jason's fault.
So you're fine with David, but there's still something to blame. It doesn't sound like you're fine with David.
I guess. I mean, you could definitely call it my own headcanon too, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
If we're being honest, but
I think you really loved the emotional journey David went throughout the entire anime. Is that fair to say?
yes.
Okay. And I think that's where my big problem is because I don't think the actions and the storytelling justified the emotions.
I think that they did justify it, but I don't think David actually expressed them consistently. Like there were times, especially when the cyberpsychosis was starting to kick in, where he was just almost emotionless. And so you couldn't really tell if he was as committed to what he said he was committed to as he wanted you to believe.
So this is okay. I know we need to move on, but this is there's some structural issues going on, right? You've got David who just had this really terrible thing happen to him where he watches his, spoiler alert, boss die, right? And I know that his boss promised him his arms. I get that. And that's why he ends up with them later. However, we watch David watch his boss go down this terrible path where he ends up doing these terrible things because of this terrible sickness. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to do the same thing.
Well, he's special.
Also, I do think the anime both sets this up and points us to David's character flaw or trait that will lead to this. It's when Lucy's like, you're the guy who jumps in. You jump in to save people.
Okay, sure. But okay, and then let me get this out real quick.
I want to add one more thing.
Okay, fine.
And I love that he wears a paramedic coat to kind of symbolize that. I know it's his mom's coat; it has more meaning to that. But he wears the clothes of a paramedic to us, someone who jumps in to save people no matter what. Okay. I love that.
Fair.
If they have the insurance,
but not in Cyberpunk world. Just saying for viewers.
Oh, okay.
We have this world that wants to do flashiness and style and bravado, right? Fair. But he's in this committed long-term relationship with this woman that cares so much about him and is constantly telling him that she wants him to live and that she wants to be with him and spend time with him. And every decision he makes after halfway through goes against those wishes. And it pisses me off the entire time.
But she'll die if he doesn't.
What are you talking about?
The city kills everything.
Oh, okay, but he knew how much it was going to cost to get to the moon. It looked like a vacation spot. It didn't look like an escape spot. 2, Jeremy just mentioned if this is like in California, they can literally just pack up their crap and drive away. Go to another city.
So there are other cities, but I don't know how far they are away. And this is specifically called an autonomous city. So it may be that the other cities are under completely different governments. They may be that there are other better the enemy you know than the one you don't, right?
Sure.
They may have that mindset.
But there were no other options besides, I guess I need to die.
Well, I think that came a little later.
And also, like, if he's like, okay, well, now I'm dead, isn't the city still going to just kill her?
Well, yes, absolutely. But that's not usually.
So it was a valueless sacrifice.
That's not what martyrs think of, though.
But also, she went to the moon, so no, she's not going to die.
She came back.
Yeah,
she did not.
Well, it looked more like it was a resort. I don't think there's a
Is it a
city up
vacation
there.
spot or is there
Um,
a city up there? Because it looked like a vacation spot.
He had said there's no coming back from the moon. That people thought of it as a prison because once you're there, you're stuck there. But it did definitely have like, hey, welcome to the moon.
Yeah.
But I thought he made
I guess that
comment
wasn't
earlier.
clear.
Yeah.
But also, like, the amount of money he was getting for some of these jobs, like, I don't see why he couldn't have just taken her and gone there to live at a certain point.
Especially like if you look at the different cyber parts that he got and you think about how much they
Right.
would cost in game terms, like yeah, he could have afforded that trip.
So, yeah, no, I don't like this character. I think we're just going to disagree, but those are my reasons. I think he could have had a lovely life with the girl that he loved and the girl that loved him out on the moon. Instead, he threw away his life.
He's going to make it to the top as an edge runner. You know, he's got to stand on the top of the HQ building.
I mean, it'd be a really crappy story if he didn't die. Like, the whole point of the story
Right.
is he has to die.
The OP would just fall on its face.
I don't see why that was the story until halfway through.
As me and Jeremy had an online discussion a couple days ago, this is Cyberpunk, which is a subgenre of noir, and noir
Right.
is about fatalism and gloom and doom. Like, you have to die.
Yeah.
Okay, then I just don't like that world then.
Yeah. Which is interesting because you like noir and Cyberpunk is a child of noir because they share those qualities. But it may be that, yeah.
When no. When did I ever express that I love noir?
Oh, you love noir. You talk about it with the mysteries.
You
Oh,
love
yeah.
you love the Matrix. I don't know how you feel about Blade Runner.
We've had anime that were classified as noir and you like them.
No, I like the style of noir. I'm not sure I like the idea of fatalism. And yeah, I love the Matrix because Neo does everything he does to save everybody, and everybody is
But he
able to
dies.
actually. But he comes back.
That's when it skips, like it's no longer noir at that point.
Yeah, that's probably fair. I don't think the new Matrix is noir.
Yeah.
It definitely has a ends with rainbows ending, whereas
Yeah.
the original Matrix was like, this all ends in death and sadness.
Yeah, but I guess Neo's death at the end of 3 was earned.
Well, on the topic of dying characters, this was actually something that was pretty cool in the game before the anime even released. The Edgerunners expansion released for Cyberpunk. And in this expansion, you got a whole bunch of little like garments and other things that would be Easter eggs for the show, right? You also got a drink in the local cantina tavern thing, and the drink had his name. And so everybody that was playing the game immediately knew, oh, he's going to die. Because you don't get a drink named after you unless you went out with a bang.
A quick game question for you.
Mhm.
Later on in like episode 8, 9, or 10, the corpos are like discussing the hackers, and there's like 6 of them in portraits, and one of them has an A on her face. Is she in the game?
Has an A on her face. Probably. There were definitely
Okay.
characters that were in the game that I saw.
She looks
I'm trying to
familiar.
remember
I
what
was
I've
like,
seen.
wait a second. Is she one of the people you meet in the bar and she gives you jobs?
I think she might be Johnny Silverhand's girlfriend if we're thinking of the same person, because I think that might have been one of the faces.
Oh, I do want to mention that.
Mhm.
This anime does lose some points.
Hmm.
For no Keanu Reeves showing up for even a cameo. Can
He's
I
dead.
I don't care. I want his voice. I want Keanu Reeves'
Oh,
voice
okay.
in the anime for 5 seconds. I don't care how you do it.
I don't know if there would even be a way unless it was in the net, or unless somehow he spoke, like you encounter V or something. But this takes place before V, right? Like D before V. And so I think Johnny Silverhand is just still locked inside of the little chip at this time.
Look, I want Keanu Reeves in anime. Okay, is that too much to ask people?
Imagine if they were walking to the bar and like there was like this little like disc up here with like Keanu Reeves like hologram going, "You're amazing and you're amazing."
He'd just be shooting off his gun at each one as he says it. That would fit for the character.
All right, we can move on. We see David's life. He has to wake up his mom because the washing machine is not working because they haven't put in the money for the washing machine. You have to pay literally fees for everything in this world. We see his.
It should be mentioned that this Night City itself is actually jointly owned by corporations. So there is no government here. The corporations are your government.
So who are the police? Because they seem to be on nobody's side.
They're basically like, you would think of them almost as private security, but just the ones that are jointly hired by them, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how that works. I just know that it's a corporate run city entirely.
And they'll spawn out of walls too.
Yes. Yes. Although the newest patch apparently lets them show up in vehicles.
All right, anime guys, anime. No matter how bad Jason's takes are, we have to keep talking about it.
Okay.
So we see his walk to school. Hey, do you think him falling off the edge, dropping off an edge into a pile of garbage to get to school is symbolic for anything?
Theme, hammered in your head.
Theme. And like Jeremy mentioned, there's some grotesque things he walks by. We just see how horrible the city is as he eventually gets on a train and has to go to the right side of the tracks just to get to this upper tier school that he is. It's a corporation school too, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And he goes there and he's had a problem because his visor to go into class, the simulation, everyone had to update. Gosh, that's not the most real world thing I've ever heard in my life too.
Right.
For sending your kid. No, you got to get the new school book.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so he had his hacker doc, Ripper doc.
There you go.
He made him customize his current model so that it'll work. Doesn't work. It crashes the whole classroom. And he's being threatened for expulsion. His mother comes and picks him up, and on their way home, she's like crying with like, I've worked so hard. You can't quit. You got to get to the top of the tower. You got to become this big shot in, I forget the name of the company, but Arca Dama, whatever, in this corporation. And then a random gun battle breaks out around them. Their car gets totaled. They flip over. He wakes up. His mom's out in the street. He's stuck in the car. The paramedics show up. They check his mom and say she hasn't paid for insurance. Move on. And they leave her and they leave him. And hey, if you think this city sucks, it does. He ends up in a hospital and they're like, yeah, you have 3 days to pay us back. We saved your mom with the surgery. He goes back to school. He gets beaten up by a bully who's using cyber enhancements. He kicks the crap out of him.
I love how the bully, like, he's just punching the air in front of him, grandstanding, and then decides that's not enough and starts actually hitting him.
Yeah. This is this classic pompous rich kid, can't stand the poor guy, beats him up. And then he gets a call from the hospital and they're like, oh yeah, your mom didn't have good enough money for proper care, so she died. And then
I love that she was stable first.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, she's stable. And then, nope, she's dead. Now there is something to consider here. A common practice in the game is people are sold by doctors to be harvested. So his mom may not have actually died. She may have been sold, and he was just given a can of dirt. She may be being cut up for organs.
Fun.
Ugh.
Yep.
And then
Flashy.
the most
Yep.
the most dystopian thing I think I've ever seen. For all the cyberpunks I've watched, he picks up her ashes from a vending machine.
Mm-hmm.
That dropped my jaw. Great visual storytelling, way to make the world feel. And I was like, oh, everyone's dying.
That much worse.
This is the worst.
Yep.
He goes home. His apartment's locked because rent is overdue. He breaks in and is staying there. And then he finds in his mom's bag this. What is it called, Jeremy?
Sandevistan, and it's actually an operating system. So when you put that in, that lets you pick like what things you're going to have that are like software you're going to run to be able to affect other people and stuff. In this case, it does something different.
And it replaces his spine, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's told it's military grade.
Military
Yep.
grade. Because he's asking Ripper Doc if he can sell it. He gets a call from the school bully who's just like, "Hey, I heard your mom died. Probably deserved it."
I couldn't believe he said
Dude.
that. Holy
That
cow.
was so bad.
Like, that's brutal.
Yeah.
So he takes the I'm not gonna be able to say. He takes the artificial spine to Ripper Doc, and he's like, "We're jacking me up." What does he actually say? That's close enough.
Yeah.
Chroming the F up.
Yep,
There
that's
you
what he
go.
says.
Yep.
Thank you, Jason. You did pay
You're
attention.
such a good choom.
I've been saying "choom" around my daughter just because it makes her cry right now.
Oh,
It's funny to me.
That's terrible.
You gotta do it while it still works. Should've
That or
never
I'll start singing. I'll start singing the song. You know, all the music added to Spotify playlist. I know all the words to that song, so I can start singing whenever I want.
See, Troy's got a dark side.
No, I do. Also, speaking of watching this with my 16-year-old daughter, this was the worst scene. Because when they show Doc, he's currently in a simulation where he's having a good time.
I forgot
With
about this.
multiple people.
Yeah.
He's thrusting into a great time, and,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh man, this is awkward.
And it's not like just a quick flash either. It's like
No.
we're gonna linger here a while.
Mhm.
So I actually want to talk a little bit about both the gratuitous nudity and the
Mhm.
gratuitous violence, and how
Mhm.
much that's coming through in the game, or maybe the role playing game, because the violence I can understand, because like when people's heads are exploding, it's also showing how mechanic and non-human they are. So I was kind of
Mhm.
getting it. And then there's scenes with the nudity where I felt like, I guess it's showing that like this body's not even really their body anymore. So why
Mhm.
even bother covering it up? But also still, I just felt like it's so much nipples, so much.
Mhm.
It seems like we could not do this much.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. This is definitely something where in the game they were trying to emphasize exactly what you're saying, where it's like this sort of nihilistic, nothing matters anymore. You're not human. But of course, in the game, that doesn't really manifest very much. I mean, you do have characters that are sometimes topless. And like in your character creation screen, that's one that everybody knows about, is the female character is topless. The guy can be naked as well. And so they definitely treat this as an M title in the game. However, one thing that was interesting is in the lore, because they're so chromed up and because they do so much with these brain dances and with the net and virtual reality, sex isn't really something that they engage in as much physically. There's some characters that actually refuse to do that. It's all virtual. So, so I think that it's that sort of detachment that they have grown to have, and the anime is just trying to display it as another factor of how broken and debauched that this world has become because of breaking away from your humanity. So the game tries, but it's limited in how it can do it.
So in your guys' opinions, too much or strongly reinforces those ideas and was well needed for what they're trying to say?
Needed, I'm unsure. But I mean, there comes a point where, like later in the story, you have both Lucy and David in their apartment, and it just seems like that's, as you said, Troy, like they're mostly synthetic bodies, so they're being comfortable at home. And was that needed? Probably not. Was it part of that world? I would agree. Yeah, that's part of the world.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I actually really liked the second half there where you were describing that when they're in their own house and they're just naked. I liked that because there was nothing necessarily sexual about it. It was just entirely them being comfortable in the costume. It's not them anymore. You might as well be wearing a mask or a suit. So that was cool. I thought that was very effective, and I didn't mind it. I would even probably go so far as to say it was better to keep it than to get rid of it. As far as the other sex scenes in the beginning, there's only I think one or two. So I didn't really have too much of a problem with them. And even though they weren't like a blip, they certainly weren't more than maybe 3 to 5 seconds tops.
Yeah.
So I don't think that it necessarily lingered on them to the point of being too gratuitous. And they did kind of the same thing with the guys that were self-gratifying outside, all right? Like,
Right.
they didn't linger on it. It was just there so that you get the sense of the city. So I do think it was effective. I think it would have been too cleaned up if those things weren't there. I don't think it would have been as effective. Now, for the violence, though, this is way more than the game can do. Way, 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 way more. Like in the game, certainly you do have a little bit of dismemberment, but the vast majority of the time when you kill NPCs, they don't technically die. Now, it depends on the weapon you're using, but the vast majority of the time, they actually wind up on the ground unconscious, and then you decide whether you're going to just, take their stuff, loot them basically, and walk away, or if you're going to finish them off. Like I said, though, certainly there is some dismemberment, but it's nothing like what the anime did. So the anime, I think, went way farther than was necessary there. I actually think it was a bit more gratuitous with the violence compared to the game than it needed to be versus the sexuality.
I say that. I think that was important to talk about, though, because I think some people are going to watch this and be like, what's going on with all that? So I did want to get your thoughts. So thank you, guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, back to the story. After he gets it implanted, doesn't look like they use much anesthetic for these surgeries.
Not for him. He's got that little bar he just bites on.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if they're taking your spine out, you're not going to be biting on it for very long, right?
I guess that's true. Yeah, he gets installed. He returns to the school and he beats the bully up. Beats him in one punch.
Yeah, one punch. I should mention that the doctor, is my favorite voice actor in the sub. It's the same guy that did the To Your Eternity, the guy in the background, God, basically.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, I love that guy's voice.
You mentioned him before. That's cool.
Yep. Love that guy. Even Tanya was sitting over there when his voice started. She's like, wait, it's that guy. It's that guy. Who is he playing?
In the English dub, he kind of has like a Jamaican accent.
I almost thought it was like a WoW troll. Like, he had the same kind of cadence along with it.
Oh, that's funny.
You'll be needing these drugs. It's
like,
it's like,
wow, no, that is,
calm
totally
down,
different.
Davey. You chew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. So then we see a corporate bigwig. We'll just call him a corporate bigwig. We don't really get like, it's just you're part of the corporation. You're obviously a big deal. Mm-hmm. This guy's name is Tanaka. He's the bully's son, and he finds out
bully's dad.
Yep, that's definitely better. He's a boss baby, guys.
Yeah, voiced by Alec Baldwin.
I didn't have caffeine for this podcast.
Oh, okay. Hey, OPED, you got a free one there.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So the dad of the bully gets a call, and they're like, "Yeah." And so he's been kicked out of the school, but he has that military spine thing that Jeremy likes to say. And he's like, "Oh, well, that's amazing because that doesn't work with anybody. Every time we put that in someone, it makes them go crazy." The guy in this is the same from the guy in the beginning. It drives people crazy. He's like, "Let's bring him back into school. Who cares about my kid?" And then let's test on him. So David actually starts getting calls to come back to school, and he starts ignoring them. But before that, he gets on a train, and he had noticed this girl before once, and he notices her again. But now that he has the speed of God,
yeah.
when she tries to steal his chip, did she steal it in the beginning?
Oh, you mean
it
you think
sparkles
that
by his neck when he first sees her?
Maybe.
There's a sparkle by his neck, and
yeah,
but I don't remember them mentioning it. Anyway,
huh.
She's able to make. She's a hacker. She can hack your brain, and she's able to make your whatever disk you have eject.
Micro SD.
Your USB ports eject.
Yeah, exactly. It just pops out.
But he catches her because he's so fast, and then she grabs him and she's like checking him out. She's like, "Oh my gosh, you got this military grade equipment. You should join me. You should work with me." And so they come to an agreement, and they do. They take down marks on the train all day, and
You should mention that, like, when they come to the agreement, she slowly unravels the glowing garrote wire that she had wrapped around his neck.
I guess that's true, huh? Yeah.
Yep.
And I think they come to like a 70-30 split.
Yeah.
Or is it 60-40? Anyway, and they come to a business agreement. They rob people on the trains all day until he passes out. So then they're in an ambulance, and the ambulance technician is like, hey, he's got military grade equipment. I'm going to take that.
Yeah, and she knows it's illegal too.
Mm-hmm.
So she decides to rob them instead of helping them. So Lucy just ejects the gurney out of the back of the ambulance and goes flying down the freeway on it. And I love this scene. It's beautiful trigger animation. Her face is so lively, and you can tell it's the moment David falls in love. Like, cars are whirring by, and he's staring into her eyes. Now later it shows he does throw up from the the G's they're pulling.
Mm-hmm.
But great scene. I love that scene.
Mm-hmm.
Since they're not getting help from him, she takes him to Ripper Doc. Basically, he's like, yeah, I didn't give him any meds. He didn't buy any meds, and you apparently need meds if you're a cyborg.
Yeah, it's not actually a big
apparently.
Yeah, it's not a big thing in the game, but I guess it's important maybe in the tabletop.
Yeah.
There is a really cool mod that has come out since Edgerunners came out that actually implements a lot of these things into Cyberpunk 2077. You have
so it's like
the
survival system, like food and water.
Sort of, not too much. Basically, you have one meter. It's a humanity meter, and then the more cyberware that you put on, and then also the more people that you kill drops that meter, and then you have to use the immunosuppressant to like bring it back up or sleep. But if you let it get too low, you start getting a lot of visual anomalies that make it impossible to play.
That's awesome.
Just
Yep.
quick reminder: we're an anime podcast.
Anime and everything that it touches.
She uses the chips they stole to buy him drugs. I think it's enough for 3 days, and then she takes him back to her apartment because he needs a place to stay. While there, they talk about why he's doing things, and that she's an edge runner, and she has this poster about the moon, and she's like, yeah, I want to go to the moon. That's when we're not quite sure what they said. We don't have confirmation yet, but she ends up going into a simulation with him of the moon to show him why she wants to go there. And there's this beautiful scene, and I love the move of her just walking in front of him casually while her hand is behind her, beckoning him to take her hand. That's such a sweet. So we're gonna find out in a moment that this was all a con, and she's honeypotting him. And my daughter was so mad because she thought this was real. And I was like, what, you didn't watch The Great Pretender with me? But I was buying it too. And I'm like, why did I believe that this was going to be real? It was so sweet and so endearing. I thought this, I was like, this is a really well done building this relationship. I'm into it. And when he gets snapped out of it, I'm like, oh yeah, criminals and horrible people. What was I thinking?
Mom in a ash can.
Yeah.
Yep.
But we do come to find out later that like it was half real for her.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I just looked up the moon information, and apparently there are like subterranean tunnels, and it's jointly owned by multiple nations. And so, yeah, getting up there, that's a permanent place to stay if you want.
All right. So we meet the gang. So apparently this guy named Maine, who leads this gang of edge runners, it was his Sandevesten spine that's supposed to be installed. And it was gotten for him by the mom because she was the trauma person who worked at the crime scene. Does that mean she's also the one who got the memory?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wait, she doesn't know David's the one selling it though, right?
Nope, she got it and took it to the Ripper Doc, and then
the Ripper Doc went to her kid. That's messed up.
So she's got like a day gig where she works for trauma, like the ambulance people, and then her nighttime gig is she works with the edge runners.
Well, she uses the parts she got from working trauma and gives them to the edge runners.
I don't think she ever goes on missions or anything.
We do need to talk about
we should say that she works with them.
I think it's like a fence works with them.
Okay.
but on friendly terms. Like they know her,
Yeah.
and obviously there's loyalty.
Their
based on
attitude
what-
switches real fast because like they're
Yeah.
hanging him upside down, and then they realize, oh, this is Gloria's kid, and they're like, oh, condolences, sorry, man.
Yeah.
So we need to talk about some of these gang members. First is Lucy, though. We do need to talk about Lucy. Second main character. Thoughts on Lucy?
I really like Lucy. I think her backstory is fascinating. I would love to have more of. I would have loved her as a main character. I think her like side mission of I'm gonna protect the people that I want, and also like learning more about the old net. That would be super cool. Like I would love to like dive into that more.
Yeah,
We lost Jimmy. But like I think her involvement with David is in the first half is great. I think they have a blossoming relationship. They learn to really care and lean on each other. And the way the relationship kind of evolves goes from kind of that naive, younger type of love to a more mature, love story. And I actually really enjoyed that about it. And I think her character was well done.
I get it. I know why you don't like David. You're heartbroken. He broke Lucy's heart.
Aww.
Yeah.
You saw the ship
Aw.
Yeah,
crash.
I was pissed. The very last scene of this anime, I was so mad. I was like, there is no reason she should be standing alone.
Aww.
I mean, I thoroughly disagree.
I was
but
100%. First half of this
Studio
anime is
Trigger
100%.
played your heartstrings.
Yeah.
I was
Sounds
100%
right.
sold. I was 100% sold on shipping these two. And they had such a mature relationship. And I
It
was
was
all
good.
in on it. And then David had to go F it up. And so
Did you think he was surviving this?
I didn't know.
You watched the OP, right?
The OP has him
Yes.
take a bullet to the brain,
Yeah.
which is
Okay.
exactly how it ends in the anime too.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
But okay, but it doesn't. I'm not talking about expectations. I'm talking about good storytelling. This was bad storytelling.
It depends on your objective. Like there are things
Yeah.
that were bad about it, but the overarching story of guy meets girl, they fall in love, and then guy dies. so
Guy
that girl-
kamikazes.
Yeah. Guy kamikaze
Okay,
because he thinks he has to
we're
do
recovering-
something and then it's tragic.
We're covering ground.
Yeah.
Yes. We all agree there's technical issues in the storytelling. And obviously
just
the
overall
emotional
issues.
through line worked until it didn't
It
for
worked
you.
too well, apparently.
All right. Jeremy, your thoughts on
I don't
Lucy?
think the intended result was anger, though.
Jeremy's thoughts on Lucy.
They
I
don't
have-
matter.
Yeah. Jason feels really angry about this. He's got some serious. This is what happens when Jason gets emotions. That's why they don't happen very much.
This is what happens when we watch Studio Trigger.
Yeah.
That's
It's
fair.
true.
That's
Every
fair.
time. I have zero complaints about Lucy. She was very. She felt very much like a kid on the streets in the first half. That was cool. She didn't trust him. Didn't think things were going to happen. Didn't think he was going to live up to what was necessary for him to even survive. Why bother? But at the same time, there was an interest, a curiosity in him. Maybe it was because he was actually able to use that Sandevistan in ways that shouldn't be possible. So there's a little bit of familiarity. I had to leave for a moment, so I may have missed. If you already covered this, just holler.
Nope,
No,
you're good.
Okay. But the fact that he was able to use the Sandevistan 8 times in one day and just essentially wind up throwing up instead of going absolutely cyber psycho and breaking down, going into a catatonic state or something, means that he is different than everybody else. He's unique. And so is she, with her background and the things she was taught to do, and the fact that even to get to that point, she had to pass certain aptitude tests. She's going to feel that familiarity with him. So he's intrigued her even from the beginning. And that came across really well. It was very cool watching their relationship develop. In the second half, I was a little bit frustrated that she wasn't more open in communicating with him, but I understood why she didn't. It was, there were these times where, he's like, I don't know what she's doing. She doesn't want to join us. And, now she's disappearing. And instead of saying, I'm doing this to protect you, or, here's the situation, she just kind of leaves things bland. It's the same trope you always get in shows where you're like, just communicate.
Just talk.
Yeah, but at the same time, I do think that they provided a reasonable explanation for why she wouldn't, both in her personality that was established at the beginning. Like, she's a very cautious, tentative person. And so if she thought that this might put their relationship in jeopardy if he knew, or put him in more danger, there is a very good chance that she would choose to not take that risk at all. And which is really funny because that removes her from the idea of, what what exactly an edge runner is, the fact that they don't care about risks. Like, she's not acting like an edge runner.
Right.
But it means that she's trying to maintain at least some semblance of damage control over her relationship with him and his life in general. So I could see that, she would not think that she could talk to him on equal grounds about things that he's out of his depth, but I still kind of found it irritating. And I think that's probably the same exact reason that Jason found those other things irritating, is because this seems like such an adult relationship, a mature relationship, I should say. Everything indicates that they would communicate more easily than they did. So it was weird to not see that happen.
No, she didn't trust him not to run off and go take care of the situation.
Yeah, exactly.
And because he was making constant bad decisions over and over again with installing new tech in his body, going on more and more dangerous jobs. And she wanted to take care of this situation herself because she didn't trust him not to die. And that was her biggest goal. She didn't want him to die.
Exactly. And that's what I mean. Like, that was the only way she could maintain any kind of control of the outcome, was if she just cut him out of the knowledge, kept him ignorant. But it was still frustrating.
He would have gone marching straight up to Atom Smasher. And anyways.
Yep.
The only thing that you guys haven't touched on that I want to bring up is that the reason she loves him and the reason she doesn't want to fall in love with him, especially initially, is the same reason. And it's that you're the guy who jumps in and saves people, which is why she doesn't tell him about the files, because he will jump in to help her. And, and I love that dynamic. She knows he's going to die. She knows it from the get-go. You can just, she's like, I don't want you to die, I don't want you to die, but she knows he's going to. You can just see it. And I think they did a great job of this, that tragic love story of, I can't help but falling for this guy that I know is going to get killed, probably for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's who he is.
Most eloquent argument yet today.
So where are we? So yeah, and then when you talk about Maine, so the leader of this gang, giant hulking man in the music video, not as big, doesn't have all his enhancements yet. I may have watched it a few times. Anyway, your guys' thoughts on Maine, the leader of the Edgerunners.
Maine was done beautifully. He, starts out as meathead leader of a gang, find out he's got a heart bigger than everyone else's combined. And he has a very satisfying, tragic story where he loses himself to cyberpsychosis because he's trying to be the leader of this gang, and he knows that he needs to back off, but he also doesn't have the confidence to keep his crew safe if he backs off of the cyber. And because of that, it costs him everything. And I thought that was brilliant storytelling. I loved his storyline.
I really liked Maine. Since we're talking about him and he does eventually go cyber psycho, it's probably a good point to explain it. Apparently,
you got to keep it short.
I'm going to keep it very short. Apparently, cyber psycho was inspired by roid rage.
Okay.
So you start with essentially a psychological profile that some people are going to be more disposed to breaking down and going into cyberpsychosis than other people. In David's case, he just happens to have a very stable psychology. And
high tolerance, right?
Yeah, and that would be what his tolerance is a stable psychology because of having his mother, because of being, even though he was poor, he was in a school, he was in an environment that was structured, had a curriculum, and he learned some good moral values that helped him maintain this. This is actually, if you want to go and read his post, the author posted on Reddit with a full multi-paragraph explanation of this. I'm just summarizing.
This is the short version?
Yeah, this is the short version. I'm telling you, it's multiple paragraphs. But in this situation, he even, because Maine was there to act as a father figure, father figure. And so in all of that, seeing this, now I'm thinking about David, but seeing Maine spiral into this doesn't necessarily stop David from following that same path. Because once roid rage starts, or cyberpsychosis, we'll call it this time, you're not thinking clearly anymore. And especially in the situation he was in, he's thinking, oh, I can do this because I'm special. But back to Maine. Maine was very cool. I love when they show us him out in the middle of like the desert, and he's jogging and he's getting exhausted. And he's just this tall, skinny guy. And at first I was like, who the heck is this? Who do they keep showing us? And it wasn't until later that I put it together that, oh, that's his face. Like a long time ago.
Yeah.
Way narrower. And so, yeah, so Maine basically slowly modded up until he got to the point that he is now, but he doesn't know where to stop. And now he's going to fall into this cyberpsychosis, this roid rage. I like calling it that because, you know, it's at least something that makes sense to us.
Mm.
And it was just, to me, this was more tragic than what happened with David and Lucy.
Yep.
Because this was like a genuine character who had not necessarily seen it. At least we hadn't been allowed to see enough of his previous story to know if he had personally witnessed somebody go into, devolve into cyberpsychosis. So it seems like he was genuinely trying to, I'm going to kill that stinking fly. He was genuinely trying to accomplish, protect, keep his crew going, get as much money as possible. The only criticism I have is, again, it's a criticism of the entire environment of Night City, of Cyberpunk in general, the setting. And that is the stupidity of these Edgerunners, in that they think I'm just going to keep on biting off something bigger and bigger and bigger until it ultimately kills me, and then I'll be a legend. I will have went out with a bang and everything is great. And that sort of thought process is, I cannot connect to it, and I find it so frustrating to have characters that think that way as important players in a story, especially formative players that are going to act as mentors and perpetuate that idea. It's like, this is the stupidest thing. This is not going to lead to any kind of stable, positive story. It will only be a tragedy, but the worst kind of tragedy, because you're thinking this tragedy could have been so easily avoided. It's not even like this person was tricked. It's like, this was just super easily avoidable stupidity. And even Maine did that. Like, he could have listened to Dario. I think that's it. Yeah, he could have listened to her any number of times, and he couldn't, because one of the actual,
he knew she was right too.
Yeah. Here, one sentence right here. In this world, having a leather armor jacket and mirror shades is a serious consideration. Okay, so like, that's the important stuff, not whether you're going to go cyber psycho tomorrow and kill the person you care about, the person you love. So, I don't know. There's things I really like about him and things I really don't like.
I really like Maine. I don't have much to add to what you guys already said. As far as the Edgerunners themselves, I find them at least realistic. I think there is a sense of, when I'm being stepped on and there's nothing I can do about it, I can rage. It'll only hurt me. It won't hurt the boot. But whatever, that's the one thing I can do. That's the one thing I'm going to do. And I think, just like most of them, I think Maine knows he's heading towards a death sentence. But like you said, that's what I can do. That's the paths ahead of me. So the rage is what is coming. I think there's a beauty in that. I agree, and like I can't understand that. That is not a life or environment that I've ever felt, and I've tried to make good decisions and not go a life of crime and roid rage. So I get that, but I think that's kind of the purpose of fiction, to explore stuff like that. So I'm fine. It doesn't bother me, even though yes, I agree. Especially I've always had a hard time with drug movies, like stuff like Scarface, where it's like, oh my God, just don't do the drugs. You would have had so much money.
Right?
This movie goes so well for you if you just don't do the drugs. So yeah, but so I get what you're saying, but I was fine with it.
Yeah, I also want to point out, like you mentioned, you can rage and you won't affect the boot, but you're like reproducing yourself so many times. Like, and the only reason I'm bringing that up is like the scene where he's in the car, which I guess that's coming up real soon here. But he's in the car and he has like this moment of like realization and doubt of himself because he remembers seeing his mom dying from a wreck because of thugs driving around and shooting on some other mission. And then he goes ahead and he partakes in it after he sees that, thinks about it, makes that decision. It's like, yeah, I guess it's okay if I'm on the other side. I'm just going to justify it and take care of all of these trauma ER mothers and leave their sons in the car broken, unable to pay the rent with, so like.
Well, I think they addressed that. I do think David, especially later, has to realize I have become exactly. I've like you said, I've reproduced. I've just perpetuated the cycle that birthed me. That's in there, and I like that they did address it. I like the progression of David's use of a gun, and I can't use this too. Literally killing a mother of a child that will leave a child just like he was.
In this case, I completely agree that there's a difference between I dislike the type of character that this is versus I think it's bad storytelling. I think they did fine with the storytelling with Maine. I just really find him distasteful. That part of him. Right.
All right. Maine does agree to let him join the crew and work off the cyberware that was supposed to be his. And the first job they do is it's actually Tanaka's limo driver. We're just told it's a bigwig, but it's actually the same guy who wants to use David as a guinea pig.
I love this heist.
They have to get
funny.
His bodyguard's limo history so they can figure out his schedule. The data from the limo.
Because they know if they steal the limo, it's going to be just hell for them because that's corpo property. And so they need to be like ghosts. Like, let's get the information we need, but we need to leave the car.
So long story short, everything goes wrong. David ends up driving a limo. He's never driven before in his life. Him and Lucy are alone in the limo, tearing down the road while basically bounty hunters that are taking contracts from the corporations to get this limo back.
Within minutes.
Yeah, chasing them down. Just like Jeremy mentioned, freeway massacre going on as they're trying to chase him down. He's using the super speed boost of his cyberware to keep the car from crashing, and literally like jerking the car left and right. A very triggerish animation. And eventually they do get to the chop shop that he's trying to get the limo to. One of the hunters gets there. They try to fight him off, but Maine arrives and saves them. And it's like, okay, you're part of the crew. They successfully
turns him into a red cloud.
Yeah.
So very quickly, the guys that were chasing him, they're called Tiger Claws. They're actually basically just there's different sections of Night City that are run by different fixers. You see a collage of them at some point in the anime. Wakako, I think her name is. She is basically in charge of like the Tiger Claws. So they're not necessarily bounty hunters any more than the Edgerunners are. They're just one faction's sort of.
And they actually do a job for Wakako later in this series.
Yep. And you do in the game too, quite a bit.
No, I won't.
I do.
I'm gonna only follow up. No, I'm taking down the corpos, guys. If I play that game, I'm just gonna be like, corpos ban. All right, I'll calm down. Anyway, since I've watched this, I've been like, I want to play that game and just mess up the corpos and do it for David.
Yeah, you should, especially the AI. It's really cool when you find the AI.
David causes his own death. What?
City
Or
caused
Lucy.
his death. Watch the OP.
Or Lucy. There you go.
Watch the anime.
There's a party. They have a celebration party. It looks like something straight out of Fast and Furious.
Family.
And we meet
Yep.
we meet two characters. First, we got to talk about is Rebecca. Not really a character with an arc, but just kind of becomes this supporting good friend who is amazing. What do you guys think of Rebecca?
I was 100% expecting him to just do like a lolly character, and they really didn't. She like there's a couple like scenes where she's not wearing much, but it's like she's one of the cooler characters on the team.
Yeah.
Yes.
And her fascination with firing weapons is amazing. I love how much joy she gets from it. But she's just a straight up cool character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really funny because there's a great story behind Rebecca. Apparently, she was not in the original script, and when Studio Trigger got the script, they put her in there, and then they were told by CD Projekt Red that no, we don't want a loli in this. And this is one of the quotes I've read was "No loli, no anime," and so they went ahead and put her in, and she has been a great hit. Apparently, everybody loves her.
Yeah, you look on Twitter under Cyberpunk, and it's half just her.
Yep. I thought so. So with that in mind, like I was trying to visualize, like what would this anime be like without her? What did she add? And I think one of the things she added was the subtlety of a love triangle, right? Because she does express a couple of times that she's interested in him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And it adds a sort of more anchored, more substantial layer to the emotions of this group, where you start to see that there's more things going on. There's more people that are actively like thinking about their futures or thinking about their interests instead of just, like her brother saying, "Oh, look, I got new hands. Watch me juggle plates." Right? Like there's actually some kind of emotional interaction between some of the supporting characters other than like Maine and Dario. So I thought that was pretty cool. Also her energy, I think, pulled the anime away from being so melancholy that it would be very difficult to stomach. Just having her leap in different scenes and just do some kind of spazzy move, like when she kicks the rookie in the second half.
Yeah.
She's just so pissed off, she just starts kicking him for no reason. Or when she gets those big hands in remembrance of her brother, and so now she's running around like walking on her hands.
On her hand.
Like she's got these little shenanigans that they lighten the mood. It helps with pacing. She is like the control knob for the pacing of this anime.
I agree.
Yeah, really like the character.
Wait, Jason, you already talked about it, right?
Yeah, I really like this character. I think she added a lot.
My daughter's favorite character, and we'll talk more about that later. But I think Jeremy's spot on that. She added a comedy tone. Also, a friend for David when they had to split David and Lucy up in the story. So there's someone who cares about him and is telling him how stupid he's being, and that really just made her endearing. I kind of saw her as like, oh, there's funny side character, and by the end, she's endeared herself to you with how good of a person she actually was deep down. Not just, hey, I want to bang David and I love big guns. She actually had a couple extra layers, and that was nice.
Yeah.
I did love the line of, what, do I need to be, like, approach him all soft? Like, what, why isn't he reciprocating?
Yeah. Yep.
Also showing up at this party is what Jeremy's already referred to as a fixer. These are like middlemen between the corporations pretending they're not doing crime and the actual criminals doing the crimes. And we meet Faraday. As close to an antagonist as we probably get, even though I do think the city itself is the antagonist of the story. But voiced in the English dub by, I'll get a message name, Giancarlo Esposito. Anyway, guy with a great voice, great villain voice. What are you guys' thoughts on Faraday?
I thought Faraday was, I liked his villainousness, if you will. And I loved that he kind of stated the obvious of what Night City was. It was like, you have no reason to know the reasons behind my ask. I'm providing you a paycheck. You do the job. He literally says, you are here to check a box. That nothing else. And I love his reasoning for it too, that it will cloud the issue. And I don't need this issue being cloudy. I need this thing executed. And he kind of brings that like stark reality to the screen when he's on screen, not just being, mustache twirling villain. And also you make a good point, Troy. The city is more of a villain than he is, even though he is villainous, but he's using his villainous ways to climb the corporate ladder just like everyone else. He just wants a better life, but not for good reasons, obviously.
Right.
Obviously he's a really dirty, terrible dude, but he's still doing it the same way everyone else is.
Yeah, but his goal is to go one step up using other people, just like even from David to Maine, everyone is doing the same thing. I'm going to go one step up, and I'm going to hurt a lot of people doing it.
One of my favorite scenes actually in the anime is where he gets in trouble with his contractor.
That's what I was going to say too.
And the contractor doesn't blame his subordinates; they blame him because he is the ones that's supposed to be getting this thing done. And that he was in like this hot water, right? And that was really good storytelling. I did like that.
He is middle management all the way.
So, as far as fixers, are they also net runners? Like, because he seemed to show abilities similar to Lucy.
So everybody has software of some kind. Some people will be able to like shock or stun or make you think you're disarmed or actually disarm your weapon, things like that. That doesn't necessarily mean that you are a net runner. It just means that you have some software that can affect other people. A net runner would have to be more devoted, have a lot more software that is devoted to that. And there's different, like the Sandevistan is one operating system, but there's other operating systems that have a like higher capacity or they're more potent. And so he's, he may have some netrunner capability, but I honestly, I didn't get the impression that he was a netrunner so much. If they are a netrunner, you're definitely going to see them like in a bathtub filled with ice.
Because I think he mentions it at one point that he has been in a bathtub full of ice before.
Okay, well then maybe he is, and he just isn't normally using it.
It kind of sounded like if you're a fixer, it's because not only are you in this place on the corporate ladder, but you also have the abilities to dive.
No, that's not associated necessarily with fixers. Fixer just means that you have the contacts and you've established a lot of trust between yourself and your contacts, and you can
middleman.
Yeah, you can be that middle management.
I love that Jeremy called him middle manager because that's what I loved about him. Ever since Rogue One, sorry to bring up Star Wars again, but in Rogue One, where the bad guy is just this middle manager in the Empire, and it's like, yeah, Dark Lords and Emperors are fun, but there's something fun about middle managers who are just kind of dicks and get their comeuppance. There's something satisfying about that, and so yeah, I enjoyed Faraday's turn, and I enjoy that when a super powerful villain shows up, he was still the priority to get rid of the characters. Yep. I enjoyed that.
Yep.
All right. The next episode basically is David trying to get some work, some experience. They're like, okay, well, you can deliver this package. So he takes the package from like the chop shop. It's the new hands for Rebecca's brother, right?
Brother. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Gold hands. He's gonna be Goldfinger.
And then we get a training montage, but he has to work out with Lucy. She takes him jogging. He replaces his lungs so he'll stop running out of breath. And then we just see them doing odd jobs and having a lot of fun shooting people. David does get a gun, doesn't like to use it, won't even use it in the shooting range. And then we see, this is episode 4, and we see the height of happiness for our characters. They're all walking down the street, and we started this episode with like we hear like falling rain, and there's like droplets in the air, and then we get that scene again, and it's a guy pissing into a barrel.
Yeah.
But but it ends up being a cyber psycho, and he murders Rebecca's brother, and they have this big fight with him, and they have to take out the cyber psycho. And they mentioned
To be
after
fair, it was kind of his fault.
Oh yeah,
Like this dude's obviously unhinged. Why would you get so close to him?
it's one of those things where it's like it's not his fault the guy killed him, but it was his fault that he was stupid enough to put himself in that situation. Yes,
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's all downhill from here, folks.
Yeah, I
And
knew that was coming
imagine
too.
The eye thing. I assume that's just for the audience. I don't think other characters can see that, right? Okay.
Yeah, that's just for the audience. And actually, I was going to mention this earlier about cyber psychos in the game. They exist as optional side quests. That's the extent of cyber psychosis in Cyberpunk 2077. There's like a handful of them. You defeat them, and then you decide whether you're going to kill them or whether you're going to keep them alive, and you get the data to somebody else who's having you do it. Not a fixer, a different person.
Can you steal their augments?
No. Nope.
Anyway, after the fight, David has to take Lucy to Ripper Dock, and then
Is this the first person that David kills with a gun?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Yeah.
I wanted to make. I didn't want to
Mhm.
pull us back to that, but I wanted.
No,
to
you're
make
right.
sure that was,
He to save Lucy, right? This is the first time he's actually pulled the trigger and killed someone with the gun that Maine gave him, and then
Which is funny because then he didn't actually wind up being the one that killed him because
Yeah,
the guy
Maine
was
had to
about
finish
the
him.
body was going to still kill him.
He and Lucy go out in the city and they're talking, and this is where she says the line about "you're the guy who runs in to save people," which is what he did when the cyber psycho attacked, even though he had froze initially. And he makes a promise that he's going to take her to the moon. After they talk about, do you like someone? Do you like someone? Promise to take her to the moon, and they kiss, and so their relationship starts in earnest here.
what a liar.
Yeah.
Not that I'm upset about this.
No, not at all.
I guess they let you down again.
100%.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Sorry
out
for
the
letting
song.
you down. Yeah.
Yep.
If Trigger can needle drop like a pro, why can't we?
That's right.
All right.
And-
The next
and let down.
storyline, they're trying to figure out how to get back to Tanaka, and David's able to provide some info that he likes some dirty movies made by a special director. So they go and they try to abduct this director who's called JK. It's Jimmy Karas. It's JK.
Oh,
Jimmy Kimmel?
Jimmy Kimmel.
no, Rowling.
But it fails. He has a EMP or something inside of him, and he stops him, and he grabs David, and then David wakes up like in this room full of bodies, and the cops run in. They're like, "Oh, he's a cyber psycho. We gotta kill him," and he starts like, not even on purpose, but murdering these cops to get away and killing everyone he runs into, whether he wants to or not. And then his arms and legs get shot off, and guns start coming out, and this is all simulation to create cyber psychos because this guy has a contract with the military equipment that he gets the footage so that he can create the snuff films that people want to watch.
Yep.
But then Lucy and Maine's girlfriend, Dora the Explorer.
Yes.
I think it's Dory.
I think it's Dora.
I think it's Dario.
Dario. It is Dario.
Dio.
There you go.
It was me, Dio. They save David, fight off some drones. They capture him, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll help you guys capture Tanaka. I mean, what am I gonna do?" But he does tell David, like, "You're gonna go cyber psycho." He's like, "I don't go cyber psycho. I'm special." He's like, "Everyone goes cyber psycho."
Yep.
Not cyber, right? Yeah, cyber, right?
Mhm.
I'm tired. Keep going. The
got
podcast
this.
must go on.
We're only halfway through.
Tanaka shows up. He tries to fight him off, shoots needles at him, but they end up winning. But it kills JK, who had insurance, so that means Trauma Team's coming. And if Trauma Team
Platinum
comes,
plan.
the cops will show up.
Mm.
There's a scene later where we can talk about it when we get there. But the Trauma Team has a great moment in the whole series. Anyway. So JK's dead. They take Tanaka. They start trying to hack him. but also at the same time, Maine is going crazy. And like he wakes up and he's beating up Kiwi when she was trying to do hacking because she failed. So they call in Lucy and David, and they want Lucy to do the hack, and David's like, okay, but you got to get Maine out of here because he's tried to talk to him and he's going crazy. Lucy does it. While Lucy's in there, she finds files on David. Basically, hey, David's special. They want to use him as a guinea pig for a special suit. And so she deletes the file, tries to hide it. Meanwhile, Tanaka's waking up and he's telling David, like, oh, I wanted to put you back in school. I was trying to help you. You got to help me. You can't let this happen to me. And then he dies right when Maine comes back, which calls Trauma Team. They revive him, and Maine, who's now basically crazy, starts fighting everybody.
With this guy
Straps
tied to his
Tanaka
chest.
to his chest.
It's a naked fat man in a chair strapped to his chest. And later, eventually he's like, well, I lose. He picks him up, picks the whole chair up, and smashes a guy with him so hard, both bodies explode.
Yep.
Well done, Trigger.
Yeah, that was insane.
I didn't think I'd ever see something like that, but I saw it.
Yep.
I do love the splattered head on the wall, and one of the dudes like, the platinum plan user is dead.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the scene I wanted to bring up. So they show a scene of Trauma Team's leaving, and the cops are like, what are you doing? You got to get in here and fight. They're like, nope, the guy's dead. None of our problem anymore. We out.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, I love that very much. David gets Lucy out, and then she's like, hey, just stay in the car with me. Don't go back. He's like, no, I can save him. She's like, don't try. It's death. But he goes. And when he gets there, Maine has what he thinks is he's built a pyre for Dario, who took a bullet for saving him. So she's dead. He's built a pyre, but it's all just explosive barrels. And so the SWAT team comes in. And he tells David, like, you gotta run, kid. You can't help it. Because David's like, I'm gonna fight with you. It's like, you gotta run. And it's just really grisly, huge explosion. Everyone's dying. And it's just, you see David screaming while the cyberware kicks in. So he starts the fast speed, but he's just screaming in agony.
This scene paid off really well because before it's always been about, like, he's had multiple discussions with David where he's like, I'm strong, but you're fast. And, you're going to have to learn to be strong. And then in this moment, he's like, you're fast, kid. Use your speed. And then he like shoots that's exactly when he shoots the explosions because he knows David can outrun the explosion.
The coolest part, I think, was the fact that when David showed back up in the car, he's literally holding one of Maine's arms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
you knew
slightly charred.
Huh?
Yeah.
And slightly charred.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you knew that this was going to happen as far as like him having the cyberware because Maine told him, yeah, sure, when I die, you can have these. But I never thought this is how he'd get them.
Right.
Yeah.
So in episode 7, now I wrote down that David had a new crew. He's basically taken over the crew, and they've added one member. His name is Julio. He is not important. He is not long for this world. Sweet Julio. So we see them basically attack a rival gang. David's now ripped. He has new cyberware. He's this huge body, almost too big for his head.
Yeah.
Almost a little comical. But he takes down this much bigger dude because he's still super fast. And then Julio runs over a trip mine and instantly dies. But they complete the job. And so we've learned that they all thought David would fail as the rookie, but he has stepped up as the leader of the team and everything's going great. But Lucy is no longer doing jobs. They want her to come back. David's always asking her to come back, but she's always asking for more time. And then we see that she's cyber hacking,
She's
working on something,
diving in her bathtub,
which we will find out.
Sure, what she's working on at this point.
We find out she's tracking down anyone who's trying to recover the data from Tanaka, trying to get to David to make him a guinea pig and killing them. David comes home, and again, I just really like that there wasn't like, oh, we broke up because Trauma thing happened.
Right.
It was, we continued our relationship. It got stronger. She doesn't want to be part of the team, but that didn't mean I wanted to break up with her for that. I respect her choices. She's respecting my choices, and that's a really healthy, mature relationship.
Yeah, exactly.
They're in a really nice apartment.
Yeah.
And his mom's
Luxurious.
ashes are there.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a picture stand at that point to remind him.
Yeah, that's true.
He gets hired by Faraday, who wants him to do a job as well, and is like, yeah, this will be if you want to take over the reins for Maine, this will be kind of a test for you.
So apparently, yeah, and that was interesting, is that because of that particular thing that happened with Maine, it's been this long, however long it's been, that they have not been in contact with Faraday. So he actually brags. He's like, yeah, I just got back into Faraday's good graces.
Mm-hmm.
He returns to Lucy, and they go out to see the stars. So they go out of the city, and they have a talk, and she finally tells him her backstory, which is that she was a child born to the same company that they're fighting against.
Arasaka.
Arasaka, that's right. And she was trained to be a hacker to go into the old net because all that data of the old net had been lost to catastrophic events.
Dude,
And
this was rough.
It's dangerous. It's full of evil AI and all these problems. So they're
Like
sending
traps.
children in. Yeah. So they're sending children in, and they're getting decimated. So
No, there's this scene of like this little kid. He's like running down this like virtual hallway, and then he's like, "Oh, there's a little star," and he reaches out for it and just slices him up. It's like,
Yep. Yep.
So these kids use their skills to escape, but they all died except for Lucy, and so that's why her skills are so good. But why she's been trapped in the city is she just doesn't know where to go or have anywhere to go, and she just wants to get as far away from this company as she can.
I wonder if that was on purpose. That's an interesting call out. A young girl escapes a facility by killing everyone with her mind powers, named Lucy.
Oh, geez. Yeah, you're thinking about
that would be a
Elfin Lion.
deep cut. Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be a deep cut. I actually thought there was a Fooly Cooley reference when he said he didn't like fizzy drinks. But that was sour drinks and Fooly Cooley, if I remember correctly.
Well, what's funny is that the drink that is his namesake in the bar in the game it actually has fizzy drink on the top of it. So he wouldn't have even liked it.
Well, no, it shows later that he learned to drink it, right? He started drinking the fizzy drinks. Yeah, so that's...
Dude, one thing I just want to say about the old net, it is filled with AI fragments.
Yeah, rogue
like
AI,
lots
right?
of different ones. Yeah, and that is something that you get to. I can't remember if it's optional or if it's required as part of the main quest, but you get to kind of go in there a little bit and at least communicate with it, and it is really cool. I love that part of the lore.
Anime.
The next episode starts with like this assistant asking for the day off from her boss, and he's like, "Oh yeah, okay, but you gotta get someone else to do the work." And she's like, "Everyone's gone home. Oh, I guess you can't go." And just basically being a jerk boss to a poor
Middle management.
Yeah.
poor woman. And she goes and she gets whatever she had to go get. She comes back and his head's gone. And then we see it's David who killed him, and he turns, and then we just see the gunshot, and he does kill this woman. And this is a big moment for David because we've seen him now like killing thugs and killing other edge runners.
Yeah, he's numb now to these kind of characters.
Right. But now he's killed a civilian, and he walks by a picture of a mother and son, and that's where he's like, "Oh, again, we already brushed on it, but we also learned he's hallucinating during this moment as well. So this he's also starting to go cyber psycho. The company Arasaka is like, okay, we know how to take care of this. We need to hit the fixers. So they send assassins after Faraday so that he will... Basically, he goes to Militech, the other corporation, is like, hey, I need help. And they're like, no, you messed up. We don't care about you. So then he goes to Arasaka and he's like, hey, I messed up. And they're like, yeah, that's what we thought. You work for us now. And you're going to help us clean up all this mess and So he contacts Kiwi, but we also get Kiwi calling Lucy, reminding her not to trust anybody. Right? That's kind of on the spot writing.
Yep.
Yeah. Rebecca has a talk with David. She notices like he's hesitating. He's having problems. He collapses in his apartment, and they take him to Ripper Doc. And Ripper Doc's like, "There's nothing I can do. You've gone too far. You got to take out some of these cyberware." And he basically grabs his throat. It's like, "Give me the meds." He's like, "Okay, these are your last meds, but this is it. Like, there will be no going back after this."
9 days, right?
Yeah, I love when David's like, "Hey, I'm sorry," and he's like, "Don't apologize. You're not coming back."
Yeah, right.
Like,
I don't have to see you ever again.
Don't worry about it. And then after, because Lucy had taken him, she's like, "What was all that about?" And he's like, "Hey, maybe we should break up." And she's like, "I don't want to break up, but I have to go murder someone. So hold that thought. I'm not breaking up with you." So she leaves because she finds out another person's hacking the data. This ends up being a trap set by Faraday and Kiwi, and they capture her while David goes to plan his next job. Which
I love one of her marks, like a Ghost of the Shell call out, because like she's walking towards him, but then hacks his vision so he can't see her, or at least access denied, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
Then David has to do this big heist, and we get this big cool car heist. And I love that they have a decoy team that just goes in and gets wiped out by Arasaka's men. But this has all been set up by Faraday, and Kiwi's there, and she's helping. They're stealing something from this truck, and it happens to be the exoskeleton that they want to test on David so bad. And when they finally do get the truck done, him using all his powers and a lot of his injections, they get the truck, and Kiwi's like, "Oh, I can't open it. Well, then Militech's army shows up, and Kiwi's like, "Oh, it opened. Let's all go inside." She's like, "Oh, look, there's an exosuit that'd be super powerful, and if someone put it on, they would be able to defeat the army. I'm not villainous."
And she like hands him her sort of like clipboard thing. She's like, "Here you go. It's all set to go."
Yeah.
Sequence on here magically.
I do like that David's like, "Yeah, I'm not doing that." And then Lucy calls him and is like, "Hey, you should definitely put it on. Put on the suit, David. That'd be great."
I believe in you.
And he's like, "That's not Lucy. Lucy would never tell me to do that." But he still gets in the suit.
Tell me she believes in me.
Yeah. Well, I know that that's a callback to like when she told him, "Tell me you believe in me and I'll do this." But that was interesting to me because I was like, okay, so that means they actually hacked her mind and got that reference point so they could use it.
But he knows Lucy would never ask him to do something stupid because he's so at least he's aware it's stupid.
But he does it anyway.
He puts it on, which he's just a torso in this thing.
Yep.
And Rebecca is 100% against. Like she even tries to stop him at one point.
This thing makes him OP. He can fly. He has magnets.
Takes out the entire arm.
He can grab your guns and then shoot them back at you. He can block bullets. He has a gravity slam.
Gravity. Yep. Exactly. Too powerful.
Yep. You go ahead. Mention it.
This is so far beyond anything you can do in the game. Like this just, and I get that this is the finale, and I also get that this is Studio Trigger, and Studio Trigger is going to go like, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. that's just what they do. So, but at the same time, you know, I don't know. This just really bugged me because I was like,
look, I just want to say, as someone who watched Promare 2 weeks ago,
again.
Yeah,
why would you subject yourself to that?
My daughter asked me. She loves it, and I really like it.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Also, then I get to hear the songs again. I like Promare. Anyway, all I want to say is, for Studio Trigger, this is really subdued. Like, compared to fire from the sun washing over the whole planet to end the...
It's true.
This guy
or
just
multiple lightsabers that can spin on each other.
Yes.
Lightsaber whips that could place a ship in half.
You are right. You are right about that. This is more like give them an inch and they'll take a foot as opposed to the usual mile.
But that doesn't mean you're not right about the setting of Cyberpunk. This is an insane power increase to introduce to the world.
Yeah, and I mean,
I can understand that.
one of the things that kind of bugs me about it is how easily that it's dealt with later by another character who exists both in this world and in the video game. And so you know what his power level is because you face him and defeat him. So knowing that he so easily took care of David is a little bit frustrating. I would have expected at least a little bit more of a fight between the two of them, given what we get to see David do. So, but
we should also mention the suit is constantly driving him insane and constantly injecting the next set of meds. Like every time he does something, he goes insane, gets a med boost. And it's not always working great. Like one time Rebecca has to grab it and slam it down so that it'll finish the injection. Yeah. But
this is on top of the meds that he's got strapped to his back and continuously feeding into his back. Like he's got that and what the suit's giving him.
I thought those were added to the suit.
I'm pretty sure those are his meds that they put into the suit dispenser.
Okay, no, when they first go in, the suit is open and it's got all these green vials on the shoulders.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Already had them. Okay.
Already had them when they get into the truck.
Nice. Okay. Wow.
So they go to save Lucy. First, they're being chased by the Militech Corporation, and he decides he's got to sleep, which means my favorite
5.
My favorite character, Falco, shoots a car harpoon at another car in front of him. He goes through one guy and then through the back of another man's head and then pulls his face through. I watched that scene twice. I was like, God dang, that was brutal.
What the heck just happened? Oh.
That was great. Anyway, so they defeat that army, and Rebecca's shooting shotguns, which makes them explode, apparently. And then the Arasaka army shows up because they want to capture David. So he wakes up and starts battling them. And it is like when I start getting stressed because like he's saying stuff like, I'm gonna make it, Mama. I'm gonna make it to the top of the tower and all. And like Rebecca's like, okay, David, we'll get you there. I don't think the meds are working anymore. And I'm like, oh God, here we go.
I do love that we keep getting cuts of the like top corpo guys in Arasaka.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually, they're not even top. They've got people above them.
Yeah, they're worried about getting caught for all this.
Right, and I love their increasing desperation each time that they're shown to us when finally she's like, you didn't think I was going to get blamed for this, right? No,
right.
This is on you.
Yeah.
He's like, well, I'm just your underling. She's like, exactly.
Yep.
Yeah, we should mention that they're upset with Faraday because this was his whole. He's like, I'm gonna get David into it. Don't worry about it. And they're like, okay, this is gone way too far. So Faraday sucks. We're gonna get in trouble.
He was just supposed to get data on David's performance, but David was supposed to die.
Right. So they call in Adam Smasher, which again is a guy from the video game, and it had been set up a little bit of like, hey, there's a guy who could do super amounts of tech and not go crazy. His name was Adam Smasher. He's a legend. Well, they're gonna like have him defeat David. I want to hear your guys' thoughts on him. I felt like it was almost very obvious this was a cameo from the game, and I didn't feel it felt very fit in very well. And also the battle they have just didn't feel very satisfying. It was very short and just kind of like, we don't have time for this properly, so we just kind of threw it in at the last minute. One of my other big problems with the anime.
I think you expressed it exactly how I feel. This felt very rushed. It didn't feel earned. It was kind of a surprise. Here's a powerful guy to take out David, because David has to die because we expressed it in the OP. And yeah, and it was super short. Like he did mention earlier on, he's like, oh, what a terrible suit. It relies on anti-grav to work. And so as soon as he takes out the anti-grav of David's suit, David just crumbles, which makes sense, right? And so at least they foreshadowed that, but I would have liked to have seen a much longer drawn out, but especially from Trigger. Like they could have made a really cool fight between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they could have. Yeah, just for a tiny bit of lore on Adam Smasher, he's like decades and decades old. Basically, his body was pulped, but his brain survived, and so he made the deal that yes, I will become a soldier for you, basically, Arasaka, and you get to keep making me new bodies. So when it comes to tech, he has the cutting edge tech, and he's like a full cyborg. The only thing organic left in there is his brain, if that. I think like part of his brain, maybe the whole thing. So he is absolutely completely in a totally different league than everybody else, and I get that. And I you fight him in the game, you defeat him in the game, but he's just.
That means you could defeat David.
That's exactly my problem. Yes. The fact that David is doing all these crazy things, and yet Atom Smasher takes him out with just a couple of simple moves. Like, really, honestly, David was fleeing the entire time. It wasn't David fighting back. It was just him trying to get away. So he was so outmatched by Atom Smasher that it just breaks my brain, power scaling brain. I'm very unhappy with that.
Yeah.
Very
DBZ, so
yeah, exactly. It's just like DBZ. Yep, when it just keeps going and going and goes crazy. Stupid Frieza. So so as far as like him being from the game, yeah, there's just 10 episodes. I don't know why the decision was to make it 10 and not 12. If you had done 12 episodes, maybe there would have been a little bit more room to develop introducing this character or something, or have a really cool epic fight scene. The escape was an epic scene, but the fight scene just could have been so much more.
Yeah, I just wish we'd cut it down a little more on fighting the random soldiers, red shirts, and a little more on Adam. So, more fighting red shirts. David's doing his thing, having more hallucinations. I love the shots of all the places in the city he walked to get to school, and then jump cutting to now, because they just showed him empty as if he had been walking, and then jump cutting to now. The car goes through and a huge pileup of cars in the intersection that he used to walk past. Love that shot. They
I loved it too.
So Kiwi calls Faraday and warns him that David is coming. He's like, okay, well, you got to meet me one more time. If you want your money, you got to. She's like, no, I'm bouncing. This is insane. He's like, no, meet me one more time. So she meets him, and then he tries to kill her. And she does eventually get killed by his goons. She runs away, but she calls Falco, best character, and tells him, okay, this is where Faraday is. And he's like, why should we trust you? She's like, yeah, right, I know. But also, go get this guy. I'm dying. So they do, and so David gets to Faraday right when he's reaching Arasaka. So he's got Lucy. Lucy had tried to escape once, but he's able to get her back. He gets to the tower. The Arasaka guy is like, no, you suck. We don't want you. He's like, no, I have this girl, and I brought the guy. You're gonna let me in. You're gonna put me on the payroll. That was the deal. He's like, no, we don't want you. And then David shows up anyway, smashes Faraday, and then he starts fighting Adam. And
I love that he tells Faraday that not to die yet because he still wants to torture him.
Right.
Yeah.
Adam's like, he's going toe to toe with Adam, and he sees that Trauma Team has showed up and has grabbed Faraday. And I love just the idea of like, didn't save my mom, saving that guy, and he just doesn't care about Adam. Adam shoots him in the gut because he's like, you're not paying attention to me. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And he goes and he smashes Faraday, and Faraday falls the entire building, and we just see eyeballs rolling across. He had 4. I didn't mention he had 4. He had 4 eyeballs.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was a true 4 eyes.
I love that they tied that to the Trauma Team though, because of how they played into David's past. That was really cool. Anyway, David grabs Lucy. He jumps out of the building. He's going crazy. The song is playing. That song is, I confirmed it. It's from the video game. It's one of the random radio songs you can listen to, and I love that they took it and made it special. And it's definitely on my playlist. So they fall down. They meet up with Rebecca and Falco, who are in a shootout with Arasaka on the bottom floor. And Rebecca puts Lucy into the truck, and she's like, hey, I'm doing this for David. And they have like this really nice, sweet moment. And then she looks up and she goes, we're having a moment, and starts firing the shotgun up. And Adam lands on her, and they go through the floor. Everyone goes through the floor. And the next shot is just Rebecca's blood and brains and guts everywhere.
Yep.
So dumb.
What?
This was not earned as far as killing off one of the main characters. This was so dumb.
I
If it was a
disagree.
random red shirt, I would have loved it because it was a cool looking shot. But
thought it
killing
was-
off a main character, Rebecca, in this particular moment, this particular way, was super dumb.
That just came across as a big exclamation point to me. I didn't have a problem with it, but
It also completes the set.
mm-hmm.
Everybody
all
in the
dead.
gang except for Lucy died. Every single one. Everyone
No,
in that
I get
shot.
it, and I was okay with Rebecca dying because I understand what's happening here. I understand everyone in the gang is supposed to die. I get it, but the way she died was dumb to me because it didn't feel earned. It was just random.
Right. Again, this is a fatalistic story. Like
Stupid.
it's nihilism. Nothing matters. Your death isn't important.
Honestly, how many people have been crushed by Adam Smasher landing on them? Like,
Probably lots.
I don't know. I imagine
love
he'd
they
just
gave her
shoot
the-
them.
I love they at least gave her the one line and to turn to look up and just be mad about it. Like, hey, not right now.
Yes.
Well,
It was a very in character moment.
I gotta tell the story. So we're going into this. We of course know David's gonna die. This is gonna be sad. My daughter. I'm like, are you gonna be okay? She's like, as long as Rebecca lives, I'm gonna be okay.
You're not going to be okay.
Has she seen a Kame ga kill?
No,
Right?
she is not.
Don't show that one to her.
She's actually in the middle of Bungo Stray Dogs right now and has found out like some character she likes dies and is like, I think I'm gonna stop. All right.
Oh.
Anyway, she grabs the remote as soon as she sees Rebecca's body. She grabs the remote and pauses it, and she can't handle it anymore, and she starts bawling. And I'm like, I didn't get visual confirmation if she's dead, and I got to write down if she's dead or
I
not.
gotta watch it again.
Because I had written earlier that Kiwi had died, and then found out that she lived, and I was like, oh, I need confirmation, so I had to rewind and watch it again for her. I'm a horrible dad, but she cried from there till the end of the series, and I start crying at the end. I did cry at this, but she went the whole way.
Mm.
Anyway.
Mm.
David starts fighting Adam, and Falco grabs Lucy and drives off.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "We gotta go get David." He's like, "Nope." He gave me a message because we had seen it. Like, I need you to do me a favor. He's like, he asked me to get you away with the money and sent a message. You're going to the moon. And David tries to fight Adam, but he gets taken apart in 2 seconds and is just a torso on the ground. And Adam's like, "Oh, you could have been fun." He's like, "Nah, I was fine the way I was," and gets shot in the head, just like in the OP. And then we see Lucy on the moon, and she's seeing David as he was when they did the simulation together on the moon, and then he's just not. It just deletes. Just.
Yeah, since this is so fatalistic, it doesn't matter. And why would you be emotionally attached to this moment?
Lucy in the sky with diamonds.
Not that I'm angry about it.
But I mean that's the point. It's the anti-nihilism. All right. That's the ending. I cried.
I wanted to cry tears of anger. Is that a thing?
There's just a lot more salt in those.
Okay, yeah. Very salty.
Yes.
Let's go to final reviews. Jason, why don't you go first? 'Cause I'm gonna need a moment.
For me, the story is a solid 2, but I did enjoy myself in some parts. I thought the first half of the anime was very well written story wise. And it's like I said in the beginning, Trigger knocked it out of the park with the animation. Just fantastic work. The music was great. So I'll give this a 3. It's not going to be a top 100 list for me, but I didn't hate my time. Well, okay, I hated the ending, but yeah, that's how I feel about it. Solid
Right.
3.
You didn't hate your entire time with it. There you go.
Correct.
So yeah, I mean it's beautiful. It's again, this is the word I always use for Studio Trigger. Apparently, it was a spectacle, and but it should be in this setting. This is exactly what it needed to be. It needed to be ridiculous. It needed to be dark. It needed to be nihilistic. It needed to be stupid. So like they hit all of the things that they needed to do. I'm just not a fan of that. There's things I liked, but there was also a lot of things I didn't like. So for me, I actually think that what I enjoyed outweighs what I didn't. So I'm going to give it a 4. But yeah, it could have been a 5. Cut the gore a little bit, refine some of the story issues, maybe get it up to the normal standard 12 episodes and use those to pad out and fix some of the introductions and some of the little things that we noticed. And I think it would have been a 5.
All right, for me, it's a 4. As much as I did enjoy myself, and it did play with my heartstrings, I fell hook, line, and sinker for the emotions, like I always do for Trigger. Like I said, I think there's some issues with David's storyline in the second half. I just do a little more show, not tell. So when he says that line, I did this all for you, so I could save you, Lucy. Then I'm like, yeah, I know. We watched that, man. I get that. Instead of, oh, that would have been better. And the use of Adam Smasher at the end just felt awkward. I don't even know if 2 episodes fix it. It felt weird to me. So a 4, but a very enjoyable 4. So
Sure.
All right. Once again, Studio Trigger hot episode.
Yep.
It never fails.
Yes.
Our next anime again is
The Devil is a part.
Devil is a part-timer. The first one, the older one, years old at this point, because it was like a surprise that they got a sequel. But again, we've all seen it, but we're going to rewatch it again, and we'll come on to this podcast and we'll discuss it. And then our next episode after that will be the sequel series. That's right. All right. If you want to share your thoughts on Cyberpunk Edgerunners, please feel free to reach out to us on our Twitter at Baka Podcast on Twitter. Our website,
Your
Baka.
psycho meds.
I can't hear the website, Jason. And I might
I
forget
can't
it.
either. I can't hear the website either. We can do this.
Namaste.
It's going great.
Our website, the animebakaclub.gov. I'm just kidding, it's .com.
Go.
And or wherever you found the podcast, leave a comment. We will try to respond. Trigger did it again. Made Jason mad. I'll
triggered.
pick him every time just for that.
Yep.
Super triggered.
All right, let's go ahead and say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
See you next time, Jum.
Sayonara.